In addition to covering the material from our asynchronous lecture, I wanted to take you on a tour of some of the other resources in this week's module and make sure that we cover the assignments. So this week there is a lecture assignment. It's very short. I describe a situation and I give you a table, and I ask which of the non-parametric methods we've used would be most appropriate for this data. And then I give you a p-value and just say what kind of conclusion would the researcher make. So a pretty easy lecture assignment and very short. Another thing I wanted to show you was the journal assignment. Now, in the journal assignment, I listed 2 articles. One of them uses the Mann-Whitney and the other one uses the sign test. And so I had thought originally when I was designing the course that I would try to find articles that were aligned with the research interests that you told me about when I had you fill out that initial Google form about introducing yourself in the class. But it just wasn't possible. It just took so long to find examples that use the statistical methods. I didn't have time to match them with your own research interests. So this week, there's 2 articles, and I'm just going to let you pick which one is more aligned with something you would be interested in reading. So just pick one of them. You don't have to do both, just one. And then answer the questions that are listed here. Which non-parametric method that we studied did they use? Now, these articles are going to use many other things for many other research questions, because as you know, articles rarely have a single research question. But all you have to focus in on is what question did they use to investigate with either the Mann-Whitney or the sign test. Okay? All right. So that's the journal assignment. And then 2 other things I wanted to outline for you. Final exam extra credit opportunities. So when we did the midterm, we did an exam wrapper activity that allowed you to raise your midterm score by 5 points. And I wanted to give you a similar opportunity to earn extra points on the final exam, just as kind of a cushion in case you're nervous. But it's not possible to do a similar wrapper activity with the final, because the final is like the very last thing that we do in our course. So we can't do something after the final exam. So I've come up with a couple of options, and you can pick either option or neither option, depending on if you want 5 extra points or not. Okay, so option 1 would be in this week's journal assignment, which we just previewed. There were the choice of reading one of 2 articles. If you want to go ahead and read both of them and write up both of them, that could be 1 extra credit opportunity. Or the second one is to complete this week's optional lab assignment. So let me just preview that for you. So in this assignment, in our class, we've covered all of the major statistical tests there are, and also how to do them using SPSS. But it may be that in your own research or for your own projects, you'll need to use a statistical method that we did not cover in our class. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to just practice using your good internet research skills to research how to do something in SPSS without me having shown it to you. So this is an opportunity either to research how to do the Mann-Whitney test using SPSS, or to how to use the sign test using SPSS. So I've given you a couple of scenarios, one scenario that requires the Mann-Whitney and one scenario that requires the sign test. You would just pick one of them, and then you would have to research on your own, and it's pretty easy to find how to do this using SPSS, and then how to write it up using APA format. Okay, so those are your options for extra credit for the final exam. So let me just go back to where that is explained. All right, so you pick one of the options. So a couple of things to note. You can only do one of these for 5 points. You can't do both of them for 10 points, okay? And the second thing is that the extra credit must be completed before our last class. So before class on 12/8, because that way I'm going to check in with you on 12/8 and know that yes, you did the extra credit, or no, you didn't do the extra credit, and to make sure that we're on the same page about what you submitted. All right. And if you have any questions, I am available via email this week. I know when I was away traveling internationally, I didn't have my computer with me and I didn't have internet access. So I was out of contact. But I'm in Toronto. There's I'm sure really good internet where I am. I'm going to be freezing, so I'll probably be indoors all the time and on my computer. So if you need anything or you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. There's one other thing I wanted to show you in this week's module. So let me just get back to our module. I know some of you, when we got together for class this week, were a little stressed out about a project that you have in your quantitative methods class. And so one of the things you were stressed out about was the gigantic flowchart from the Andy Field book. And so I do want to let you know that I did communicate with your quantitative methods instructor, letting him know that I was not using that text, but that I told him I would go over with you how to navigate that flowchart. Now, a couple of things. One, that flowchart is super hard to read because another gripe I have about that book is that they use white font for printing, and the only way I could even read the flowchart was to take a picture on my phone and blow it up so I could get the contrast. So I went on I did some research. I actually found videos that Andy Field has put out with his book, and it was interesting because the videos start with a disclaimer that says he has a very I don't want to say raunchy, I don't know if that was the word he used, but he said he used many examples that people might find offensive, and that if you didn't like his sense of humor, you didn't have to watch his video. But anyway, he does have videos out if you wanted to find them. But I wanted to show you something that I did find. I found this interactive statistical flowchart, and what they did was they essentially took Andy Field's big flowchart at the back of the book that you got a copy of in your quantitative methods and made it interactive. So it's not the whole thing at once. So which statistical test should you use? And again, it just walks you through the flowchart step by step. So how many outcome variables do you have? And then you answer. How many predictor variables do you have? And then you answer. And then it tells you which tests you should use as a result. Not only does it tell you which test you should use as a result, because I know some of you are concerned about, well, how am I supposed to know what to do? It also gives you a link right here, which will take you to directions on if you actually wanted to do the analysis in SPSS, how to use it. Okay, so this is an interactive flowchart, which is essentially the field flowchart, only asking you one question at a time, which I think is super helpful. Many of you said, or not many of you, I only talked to about 3 of you about this, but some of you said that you were taken to something called a MANOVA as a result of the flowchart. And again, that's not something that we've covered in our course. Anything that you can do with a MANOVA, you can do with an ANOVA without the M. The main difference between them, and I just put this this paragraph right here, the advantage of the MANOVA over the ANOVA. The MANOVA has greater capability, has more statistical power. You don't have to use it, but if you use that approach instead of 2 separate ANOVAs, which is what you would have learned to do in our class, your test will have more statistical power, which is a concept that we've studied together. Okay, so I did find some pretty good resources if you wanted to read more about the MANOVA. So this resource is pretty good. I thought it gave a very clear example or a clear description of the various differences between an ANOVA and a MANOVA. And it also came with a pretty decent video that you could watch about it. Okay, so that was one resource I found for you. Another resource I found for you was this blog, which I thought was a very clear description of the difference between the ANOVA and the MANOVA. All right. And then the last resource I found for you was this one, which again I thought was a pretty clear description of the difference between those two tests. So I know that some of you were a little nervous or feeling maybe a little overwhelmed. So I did put together this little resource for you. I would have waited until we got together again, but I'm worried that your paper in your quantitative methods class is going to be due before it might be due before I see you again. So I wanted to put this together in case you found it helpful. Okay, great. So I'll see you after the holiday. If you celebrate the holiday, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll see you the Thursday after that.